This week's work is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's anything I need to walk you through as far as completing your assignments. However, we will be looking at theory, which is always fun and sometimes confusing, so I wanted to take a few minutes to go over the basics. Theory is an explanation for why or how something occurred. A theory can be true or false. It can be checked. If it's been checked extensively and found repeatedly to fit the evidence, we can use it to build further theories. Low-level theory. The first level of interpretation is low-level theory. These are theories that are used to make basic interpretations of field observations. Is this a stone tool or a naturally broken rock? Is this potsherd an example of a pottery style A or pottery style B? Are these rocks in a line or just a chance of natural patterns? Was this potsherd laying in context with the floor or just above it or in later fill? Here's an example. We observe a patch of black material with red soil around it. We use low-level theory to say that this pattern is often formed by man-made fire. We interpret the observation of the charcoal and burnt earth as left over from a man-made fire, a hearth or a fire pit, but we have not actually observed a hearth. We have observed some red soil and black stuff and interpret it to be a hearth. It might actually be a place where a dense brush was struck by lightning and burned. Or the charcoal might actually be pieces of rock containing the black iron mineral limonite, surrounded by soil stained red by the weathering of iron mineral. We hope our theory is good enough to allow us to reject those possibilities. Even at this level, our results are only as good as the theories we use. This is one reason why good drawings, measurements, and photos are very important to check the actual observations behind the field interpretation. Middle-level theory. These are theories that connect the interpreted data of fieldwork, hearths, house, garbage pits, etc., to behaviors of people or natural processes that created them. This house was occupied by a family with more wealth than that house. These people were specialized pottery makers, while those others just farmed. This garbage pile accumulated from a single big party, while that one built up from many small parties or ordinary meals. This trench was dug by people to defend their village, but that one was eroded through town in a big flood. You get the idea. Middle-level theory is often derived by observing people doing things and checking the material remains afterwards. Doing experimental archaeology is important in middle-level theory. An example would be cutting up a wildebeest with stone tools, then checking to see what sort of wear or damage is left on the tool's edge. Checking natural processes that can affect archaeological materials, like recording the condition of bones at a hyena kill site every 2 months for several years to learn how bones decay when left out in the sun. Using middle-level theory, archaeologists try to figure out what people did and what natural processes happen to form the material remains. High-level theory. These are theories that seek to explain the big question, why? Why people adopted agriculture, why certain people came to have power over others, and so on. Ideally, archaeologists form hypotheses based on high-level theories or models about the past and the issues. Here's an example. We're interested in a high-level theory that social change is often caused by high-status individuals trying to increase their power. So we hypothesize that in Region X, the wealthiest people threw a big feast to attract and reward supporters. Sounds sort of like a political campaign. We suggest a test. We should find storage and cooking facilities for large amounts of food near or in the biggest, best-built homes of the site. We go out and excavate. We use low-level theory to identify hearths, cooking debris, and structures built out of stone. We use middle-range theory to assess whether they are consistent with feasting, and we use those results to test our high-level theory about the importance of feasting in high-status individuals. Paradigms. High-level theories are based on paradigms. A paradigm is a theoretical framework, a set of assumptions, a point of view, or concept of what kinds of explanations and causes are appropriate. That is, an overarching view about how the world works. Archaeology currently has two major paradigms, processional and postprocessional. Processional suggests that 1. Archaeology should generalize, that is, seek regularities or laws of culture and behavior that cover most or all cases. 2. Culture is a system and a form of adaptation to material and social circumstances, typically a materialistic view. Economics and power are key to explanations. Religion, art, ideology are just causal, but are dragged along by material processes or are just irrelevant sidelights. 3. The past is part of objective reality, and it can be reconstructed and explained using the scientific method. 4. Archaeology should be objective, factual, not political. Factual and theoretical findings are ethically neutral and are simply facts about the past. Postprocessional archaeology paradigm is closely tied to postmodernism. Postmodernism argues there really is no truth, and our understanding of the world is only a product of the time that we live in. Postprocessional theory states that generalizations oversimplify, that each case is unique, complex, and seeks explanation in terms of how individual people acted, especially ordinary people negotiating tensions around gender roles, such as wealth differences and so on. Postprocessionalists see no point in pursuing generalizations because they would have to be so broad and vague as to be uninformative. Explanations in terms of systems or adaptation are trivial, incomplete, or misleading. Good explanations involve emphasis on ideology, religion, and other cultural ideas are considered crucial. Postprocessionalists think that past is always a reflection of the present. We are only fooling ourselves with scientific method, and argues that most archaeology is not really so scientific, but instead perpetuates assumptions and fashions in the archaeologist's culture. Some postprocessionalists have argued that there is no objective reality, that the evidence can be made to show anything, and that therefore there is not even any reason to dig it up. That extremism has faded. Most now argue that we should try for objectivity, but realize that this is rarely possible. Archaeology is inherently political, not objective. It always serves a political agenda. In the 1980s and 1990s, the fight between these two approaches was bitter and often personal, but now most archaeologists have adapted the reasonable parts of each, keeping much of processional archaeology, especially the scientific method, but becoming more skeptical of generalizations and recognizing that they describe tendencies, not hard rules, adding more emphasis on historical particulars and consideration of ideology, trying even harder to avoid cultural and political biases, and recognizing the potential political impacts of the research. So why do archaeology? What are we trying to accomplish is also a debatable question. The plain old curiosity answer consists of, what is artifact X building site doing here? Or what happened here? The intellectual curiosity answer is, we are trying to answer countless questions about humans and our past, such as, how and why did human culture arise from our non-human, non-cultural origins? When and why did people shift from hunting and gathering to farming? When did the first people get to Australia and to North America, and how? How did people come to live in cities? What leads to the development of the first states? How and why were Egyptian pyramids built? What was the economic basis of Greek democracy? Why did Mayan civilization collapse? Archaeology is the only way to get at many of these questions because it gives us access to an immense span of time. It transcends the limits of the present time and recent past to which cultural anthropology is limited. It transcends the limits of where and when history was written and preserved, and by doing so, it gives us access not only to longer runs of historical development, but also to societies that lived in conditions that no longer exist. It gives us access to a much wider range of human behavior and possibilities than history or ethnography could offer. Archaeology is particularly good for answering questions about society because it is unaffected by certain kinds of bias that plague history and ethnography. Written history tends to focus on upper classes, certain kinds of events and places, and is generally ideological based, intentionally or not. Ethnography is necessarily influenced by what people want the ethnographer to know and think about them, intentionally or not. The practical utility answer: national and ethnic identity and pride, or political uses such as Israel's constant excavations to justify a modern Jewish presence. I know this seems rather abstract, most theory is. The rest of the class is more concrete and will involve how archaeologists actually do this stuff, but theory is important. It is a necessary evil, shall we say, because you need to have a framework to base your research on. Keep this in mind as you work through this week's assignments. How might you want to apply this week's lesson to your own research?